Hey guys, so welcome to Suitcase Divas podcast. My name is Denise Diabaldi with Redbirds Travel.
And I'm Cheryl Garcia with ABCD Adventures.
Yeah, so this is episode 46. We have a special guest today, Risa August. Welcome, Risa.
I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm a little envious of your beautiful, colorful, fun backgrounds.
Yeah, well,
That's our Canva magic. We have messy offices, so we need something to block that out.
So guys, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about Risa and then we'll get started. So today we're welcoming Risa. She some of her journeys have been backpacking in New Zealand, hiking in Nepal, and her first journey post-surgery was a 6-week cycling adventure from Canada to Mexico on the Pacific Coast Highway. So this journey is featured in her best-selling book, The Road Unpaved, Border to Border with a Brain Tumor and a Bike. So Risa's a seasoned traveler, an Ironman athlete, a brain surgery survivor, and a warrior against a rare pituitary disease. So amazing. So let's tell us a little bit more. One thing I will say is in this journey, you've managed to combine your two loves, athleticism and traveling. And so as an athlete, you're pretty attuned to your body, I would think. And this is something that a lot of people can relate to. And Cheryl and I talked about in depth is tell us a little bit more about, so you knew all along there was something wrong and you were going to doctor after doctor and not getting any validation that anything was wrong with you in the medical field. And that has to be super frustrating. I know at one point you did demand an MRI and unfortunately they did finally find the brain tumor. So can you tell us a little bit more about that experience and about your diagnosis?
Yeah, sure. It was a 2010. I just completed an Ironman, was feeling great. And then shortly after, I started noticing changes in my body, and I didn't understand what was happening because I took very good care of my body, and that I was really in tune with it. And a friend asked me to do a 500-mile bike tour around Oregon. And I was like, of course, I'm all in for that. And I was really struggling with the training, and then the tour came and I struggled with the tour, and I was just thinking that like, this isn't like me.
Right.
So, I continued with, seeing doctors, and they kept saying, nope, you're fine. Blood work's fine. And I said, no, look at my thyroid again, or check this. And I've read about that, and nope, you're fine. You're good. And you're an athlete and we're not worried. And so
just very dismissive, it seemed. Dismissive.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And I started actually questioning myself. Like, am I a hypochondriac? Or, like, for example, I had extreme weight gain. So I thought, oh, maybe I'm lying to myself. Maybe I'm actually eating more than I think I'm eating, things like that. And so fast forward 7 years later, and I had severe headaches I couldn't ignore. I was barely sleeping. And and still my doctor was like, well, you're overtraining. I don't, you're fine. Your blood work's fine. Maybe you're not drinking enough water. And so I started believing that, like, maybe I'm doing too much. Maybe I'm not drinking enough water. Maybe I'm not taking care of myself.
Right.
But I remember sitting in the doctor's office that day, and I just remember the moment, and, and I have this bony lump growing out of the side of my head, which is odd too. And she just kind of rubs the bump and she's like, oh, that is weird. Yeah. And so I was just sitting there, and I'm like, well, can we get an MRI to rule anything out? And she's, no, I don't think you need one. You're an Ironman athlete. Your blood works fine. And I said, no, I think, and I was just a polite person. I never wanted to like question authority.
Stir the pot. Yeah.
Yeah. But I timidly said, no, I'd like to, I hope, I'm guessing nothing's wrong, but I would just like to rule it out.
Right.
And she had her back to me and she was just typing on the computer and she said, no, they're really expensive. I don't think you need one. And so I just sat there and I said, okay. And I tried to tell her, well, actually my deductible's paid. I actually had an emergency surgery earlier that year. And I just kind of quieted down. I like dimmed for a minute. I didn't my light. And I don't know if it was divine intervention or what, but I just said, order me the MRI.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you advocated for yourself, because it's so unfortunate that it took you having to be like, I don't care what it costs. I want this. I mean, like, I want some feedback. So good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And she was like, well, all right. And she ordered it. She's like, all right, I don't think you need one though. And she ordered it. And then 1 week later, I have a 1-sentence email from her saying, you have an enlarged pituitary, go see an endocrinologist. I was like, what? What does that mean?
Right. Yeah.
What is an endocrinologist? I had no idea.
Oh, so then you've gone through in the book, you talk about and discuss, getting that, going to see the endocrinologist, getting all of that information, coming to find out that not only did you have this, I'll give you a second to tell us about what exactly is they found, but then it also led to something else that continued to go with you as well. So can you let our listeners know what your result ended up being?
Yeah. So I had it's called a macroadenoma at the base of my brain, crammed into a very small, small cavern. And so it was a giant tumor essentially. And, so I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, what needs to happen? It was very surreal. It's like,
right. Of course.
Yeah. Like that's crammed into my head between my eyeballs. And so, but at that point, I was kind of like starting to put 2 and 2 together. Like, oh, okay, wait a minute here. But then she's like, she goes on to say, oh, and I know what you have. And I'm like, well, yeah, a tumor. She's like, no, you have this rare disease called acromegaly. And I'm just like,
I'm glad you pronounced that because I struggled with that.
We worked back and forth trying to figure that out, which is why we keep throwing that part to you to label your diagnosis.
Yes, tell us about your rare pituitary disease.
Right.
And how you might pronounce one disease.
You're not the first and probably won't be the last. And it took me like a month to remember how to say it. And and I seriously had this thought of like, really, really, I couldn't have a cooler sounding name disease. It had to be that. And so, yeah, so then she starts studying my body and looking at me and doing all these strange tests that you wouldn't normally do in the doctor's office. And she's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure I know what you have. And there's just one more test I need you to take to confirm it. And so yeah, essentially I have this disease called acromegaly, and what it does is it dumps excessive growth hormone into the body. And so that's why like I have a bony lump growing out of my head. Like all your bones and tissues grow, so your organs grow, everything grows. Mm-hmm. And which is extremely destructive to the body over time. The
only other person that people might recognize is Andre the Giant. I read that was a takeaway in your book. Like you're like, I've got the disease that Andre the Giant has. Yes,
right. And
you're so petite and he's such a big guy.
Well, and it's interesting because they believe 1 in 4 people are walking around with these tumors. Not all of them come with a disease, but many of them do. And we don't all look like Andre the Giant.
Right.
That's true. You clearly do not.
And so, yeah, so it became this all of a sudden I'm trying to find information on this, because I was going to figure it out. I always figure everything out and then come up with a solution. And so I was determined to do that. And I was finding that there actually wasn't a lot of information out there. And so that became my mission, to spread the word.
Right, which kind of leads to some of the book where you talk about that. And I scrolled down too much. One, I want to say, the way you were describing it takes me back to in your book. You did a very good job of putting us, the reader, in the moment when you were walking through how you were feeling at the doctor's office, how you felt the relief. You almost kind of didn't, it sounded, what I interpreted was you didn't quite hear the rest of it. You heard, someone believes me. Like, that's what I felt. And that, I think, is so relatable to so many people. And you did a good job of putting us there. And I think a lot of us could relate to that feeling of relief of someone finally heard me. I didn't hear what they said, but they have validated that I know something's wrong. And then as you go through the journey of the treatment and the surgery and everything, you kept us along really well in the book. I will have to say, like, Denise and I have talked about this, the feelings that it invokes,
and I like that you swear a lot. That's very relatable.
Right. Yes. We very much appreciated that, because it's honest. It's how being you. One of the things I saw throughout the book, and Denise and I, we talk about these weird things, but you had your surgery scheduled for January 2019. And then you signed up for a cycling trip March of 2019. So I don't know if this is something relevant that you've noticed, but it was very evident to me throughout the book that there was a reoccurring time frame that had some significance in the choices that you made or the people that you had met. 6 weeks. 6 weeks was something that stuck out through me throughout the book. You couldn't drive for 6 weeks. It seemed I couldn't quite figure out the time frame between your surgery and that trip, but I'm assuming it's around the 6-week mark when you thought, "Oh, I'll be good to do January to March."
You thought you'd be fully,
right?
6 weeks will be fine.
Brain surgery,
this little surgery. I got this. I'll be back on my bike in no time.
Then you had your 6 weeks of radiation. You chose the Pacific Coast trip because it had that 6-week significance. You did mention that part in there, but then you met that gentleman towards the end of the book who was also kind of in his post-surgery 6 weeks of his adventure with, I shouldn't say adventure, but that's how I always try to think
an adventure. It's not a good adventure.
Right, but it's still an adventure. Yeah. But I noticed 6 weeks seemed to be.
She did say 6 weeks stuck out the whole book, and I was like,
kind of throughout the whole thing. Did you have that connection? I know you chose that 6 weeks radiation versus the 6-week Pacific Coast tour. You kind of put those two together, but did 6 weeks ever come into play? Did you realize how relevant it was throughout?
Gosh, I actually didn't, but it's interesting that you say that, because I was in a 6-year, I don't know if you're interested in numerology, but I was actually,
that's why.
She's very into it, clearly.
Oh my God. So I was actually in my 6-year, or year 6, or however it's framed. And my blood work is always at 6 weeks, and it does seem to be a magic number. And I've just actually recently been more into numbers as well. So I'm learning more about that. So maybe it wasn't an accident.
Okay. I was just curious. And so it does seem like the number 6 or 6 weeks of some sort has still continued to be sort of relevant, it sounds like.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. It was just one of those tidbits that I caught in the book.
It's funny how different people pick up on different things. And I thought that was interesting, because while Cheryl was saying that, I was like, I do see what you're talking about. It didn't really stick out to me, but now that we're talking about it, there is a lot of 6-week stuff going on there.
Yes. And I'm one of those believers too, that even if it wasn't on purpose, it doesn't mean it wasn't
intentional.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. Right. I just thought that was interesting, but
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, so you're the second cyclist we've had on the podcast, and it's just interesting. So I I'm just trying to understand the long distance cycling mentality, because you guys must be born with, because we talked to Corey Mortensen, we're talking to you,
Oh
and it
yeah.
must just be I'm gonna guess it's like in your DNA, because like what drives you to endure the weather conditions, the physical exertions? You guys are you're riding 60 plus miles a day. Um, you focus on the road, you focus on just getting to the next destination. That's always kind of the next destination is what you're striving for. And it's that mind over matter mentality, whether dogs are chasing you or you're riding past carcasses or there's people, like you're going over a bridge, like you have so many obstacles. I just am trying to understand, like, where do you find that long distance cycling mentality? Like, are you just born with it, or you just found that you really like it? Like, what drives you to be able to do all that? Because I personally, I could not do that. That's just what I'm trying to tell you. I don't know, 60 miles a day. What? Yeah.
Right. Well, I actually, when I was racing triathlons, I actually couldn't stand the cycling portion of it. I was a
Okay.
really good runner. Yeah, I was good at running, and I got really good at swimming.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, the bike. And and then after diagnosis, because my bones had grown so much, my joints changed, and it's become extremely painful to walk or, go backpacking or and running's out of the
Right.
and so I was like, okay, I can still bike. I can still see the world and spend time outside
Okay.
on my
Yep.
bike. And so that's really where it started. But then I came to really love it. Just seeing the world from a different perspective.
Perspective. Yeah. I get that. I totally can get that.
Well, and it's
I still would.
interesting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, I just did a 500-mile bike ride across northern Spain, and it was
That's
actually
very
miserable.
impressive.
So
Yeah. So clearly you're still into the biking thing. I get it.
Well, and that kind of leads me into my next question. Because this is a way to see the world, whether it's wherever you're
Yeah.
going. It's a very interesting form of travel that we've been introduced to and we've learned a tiny bit about because it's so huge. There's so much you can do. But it seems during these moments, or there are cyclists during these trips, cyclists have moments where you just have to put your head down and power through, not even aware of your
Right.
surroundings. It's not the route, it's not what's going on. You just have to power through and persevere. So I guess what my question is, what inspires that type of travel? Is it the accomplishment of going from one destination to the other, like point A or point B, or is it the routes so like you said, you just chose Spain. Like what makes you choose that to be your form of travel? And I know because it combine your form of athleticism and stuff like that, but it just is interesting to me because sometimes I feel like you don't even notice what's going on because you have to persevere. You're competing between
It's
your love
almost
of
like tunnel
travel.
vision. Like I just got to get to that point, you
Right. So
know?
it's like almost a competition between the two loves, the physical part and the travel part. So what makes you choose to do it that way? How do you pick your destinations and routes?
yeah, typically it is, parts of the country or other countries I want to see
Yeah.
that I haven't been to yet. And but there are those moments where I have to remind myself, oh wait, look around.
Right.
You came here to, see this part of the country or the world. And so, sometimes I have to remind myself because you can get in a grind, especially on those crappy days.
Yeah.
The rainy, cold days where it's sitting in your bones and it hurts to cycle for 60 plus miles a day, which still blows me away. And you're on this journey in this book. You're on this journey. Essentially, you're meeting up. So you're sponsoring the Risa Unleashed, and these pharma companies want to follow you. And you don't seem like you really want to be. You want to be an advocate, but you don't want to be on camera and be like, I don't want to. I I don't really want to be out there, but I want to be out there to advocate for this disease, to more funding for it, for people that don't know what it is. And then you're with all these strangers, but then they kind of become your friends, you are riding 60 miles plus a day, you guys camp out. And so the characters in the book I thought were all great. Like, and I love how you named them all based on their personalities and what you thought they were. And you kind of fucked with them a little bit, like with the tiaras on the house. Like, you're just like, let's do this. Like, at the end of the day. So, but take me back, because I was really invested in, take me back to the make or break moment where you refused to be taken off the road. The wind was, there was gale force winds. It's too dangerous. They're saying, let's come back to the van. We'll get beyond these 30 miles, or whenever the weather gets better, we will let you guys ride. And you were like, fuck no. You're like, and I feel like that was the moment. It was a very pivotal moment in the book, because I feel like Bubba was the one that's like, you've been through brain surgery, you've been through radiation, you are a badass. And there's no reason, this person couldn't do it, this person couldn't do it, but you can do it. And I believe in you. And at that point, I feel like that's when your relationship with Bubba, which is the name of your brain tumor, you were like, you know what? He's actually encouraging me. He's not against me. I mean, I know it's a brain tumor and you don't really want it in your head. But at that point, I feel like you realize that Bubba was kind of your fucking motivation at that point. Like, get your moxie, get back on there and power through this shit, because you can do it. Like, that's amazing. So can you kind of take us in that moment? Did you realize at that moment, like, he couldn't do it, she couldn't do it, but I'm Risa and I am doing it? Like, at that point, what's going through your mind? It must have been terrifying, by the way, if you're barely holding on to your bike and you're over a cliff in the ocean,
Yes, I don't want to give too much away about that part of the book, but I will say that, I was spending so much time focusing on this tumor in my brain, in my head, working against me.
Yeah.
And as opposed to, well, wait a minute, we're stuck with each other.
Yeah.
So I can stop working against essentially myself. And, and start opening up to what's possible together.
Absolutely.
And so, yes, it was a very scary moment on the ride. I did almost stop several times. I was like, well, if they can't make it, how am I going to make it? And, there was something in me that said, well, you're not going to know until you at least try.
Right.
Yeah. That was amazing.
We've talked about it quite a bit, her and Denise and I, because we both were like, man, this was a good chain of events. So definitely check that part out or that's where we both kind of got, like, it's almost like the cliffhanger right before the season finale, and you have to come back. It's where they would have cut off, I think. So it's definitely a pivotal moment, I think, in how we felt in your journey with your relationship with Bubba, for sure.
Yeah. And I think the fact that you did persevere and you did take that challenge on. Now, whether you survived, we're not going to tell. just fucking with you. But yeah, it was a pivotal moment in the book for me. And the fact that you decided to do it. And I think that's very motivational. And I think that that type of perseverance and that mindset is motivational to a lot of other people. And it is actually discussed in the book. And so I think that's amazing. Just talking a little bit about preparing for a bike ride and stuff, you went over like a checklist of like things you packed and things that, in the future, maybe you could do different things. I kind of laughed out loud when I saw your list and one tire tube was on there, because we talked to Corey and he ended up blowing through 20. So clearly you're a little safer driver than him. But, I think that's a girl thing. We just got our shit more together. But, and I don't know if you packed sunblock, but I hope that you did, because Mr. Corey did forget that part as well. And And I know pack less is typically everybody's motto. I really struggle with that. I'm like, pack more. That's why I liked at the end where you're like, you know what? I'm going to pack a little bit more. The old me was all about let's fucking do this and be strategic and like OCD that I've got to get here to here to here. And then you're like the new me, like I'm not the old me, I'm the new me. And the new me is going to pack a little bit more. And I'm so for that, girlfriend. I hear you. Like pack your extra bike shorts, pack your extra, whatever you need. If your backpack's a little bit heavier, you just have a little bit more comfort. That's all. That's what I'm saying. I like that.
Yeah, and bringing it back to the tire tube, this is Denise and I both kind of talked about it to each other. It's the tire tube because we're learning about cycling through, you guys. It's very new to us, and we're seeing that kind of like coming through. Not to give too much away that was in the book, but do you know how many tire tubes you went through on that journey? Because I know about one specific part, but was there more that?
No, I got really lucky.
Okay.
I only went through 2 or 3.
That is really lucky.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We think we get a giggle out of tire tubes now because of just.
I think Corey is just like a show off. I went through 20. Like, yeah, okay, buddy.
So we laughed when we saw your one tire tube, and we're like, we got to see how the rest of this plays out.
A guy packing and a girl pack, or just your I don't know, but it is funny, and I'm all about packing more. Like,
so how do you feel about your packing now? Are you trying to be less? Are you taking your comforts? How's that? Is that stayed kind of the way you were discussing it towards the end of the book, or your Spain trip? Did you stay within your traditional minimalist, or did you go more, I'm taking what I want?
I took more what I want.
Good for you.
And yes, and it did cause some issues along the way.
That's okay.
But it still worked out. So
that's awesome. Did you ever have a point where like, I'm unloading this? I'm either shipping it back home or I'm donating it, or did you bring everything to the end?
I was determined to not lose anything along the way. So the only time I've done this in the past was like if someone was like, oh, I could really use, I don't know, a sweatshirt or something, and I'd be like, well, I have 2. Here's a sweatshirt. So it seems that I'm always prepared for myself as well as the other people I might meet.
That's how I like to be. Yes, you want to be that person. Yeah,
Cheryl's the Girl Scout leader, so she has the go bag.
I do. I always. So I love to hear how you guys pack for things like this, because you don't know one until you've been taught, and I'm sure which that's kind of leads to a good question. For your first big trip where you were doing like the 6-week, where your first big cycling trip, did you do prep before that, or did you just kind of like hop on, we're going to go for that? Did you research, or how did you prep for your first big cycling trip?
Well, my first big cycling trip was before diagnosis, but you're talking about the one.
Well, just in general for cycling, because it's interesting to me. Because like I said, our first introduction was with Corey. He didn't do any research.
He winged it. He didn't even have any shit he needed.
So we're curious.
Showed up on a bike.
Difference of like, did you just jump on a bike and say, or join a group and like, I'm in, guys?
Like you're more prepared.
Yes,
you had a pack list.
Such a planner, and I was gonna have it figured out before I even knew I needed to figure it out. So I was very stringent and strategic as I could possibly be, which I've learned over time.
You're never as prepared as you think you are. Yeah. I think that is a cyclist takeaway from books that we've read is you think you're prepared, but you're really not prepared for what's going to happen to you.
Do you carry sandpaper with you now?
You never know.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You should add that to your go bag.
Right.
And
Suitcase Divas recommended.
Yeah. I couldn't envision the peanut butter holster. I was trying really hard to envision that. So, but guys, if you are like, what are they talking about? You've got to check out this book, because the little snippets in there, those little moments where you're that sets the scene where we can actually see, and when you look at it, and now that you mention that, and you're like, is that a peanut butter holster? And then that conversation, it really emphasizes what you guys are going through when you start to notice each other as individuals versus as a group. You start to see a little bit more of that, and it was so interesting to see those little pieces come out of everybody along the route. So it was very, but yeah, I can't envision what that looks like. I should Google it and see.
I did think it was interesting too that you're like, I want this to be my journey. Like, why won't these people just leave me alone? But they cared about you. And then you guys kind of like found a friendship in this ride because you are there day in and day out. And you describe it perfectly, like how you're getting to know these people and you're letting them in a little bit more. You kind of got your guard up in the beginning, but then as you learn about them and you're riding with them, it is a great journey. Like you obviously had an amazing journey. Some of my takeaways are like, we are very, like, I feel like we are very kindred spirits. I love, like I said, I love the fact that you swear a lot. We have the fairy strands. I like that you like sparkly things. So, and you definitely are a fighter. It's amazing. So I will say that I did highlight this, and this was towards the end of the book. I love your description of, you guys went through a lot of the redwoods and the rain and the cold and just being damp and having it in your bones. And it was so enlightening when you got to the Pacific coast and you got a little taste of the sunshine hitting you and overlooking the water. And it said sparkling water like glitter dancing on the surface. Blue skies dappled with marshmallow clouds. I was just like, hot damn, that is some good descriptive words, Risa. And then I did go back and looked at your marshmallow clouds on Pituitary World News that was published in 2020. And I just think it's really commendable that you're choosing to see the bright side of things. Like you have overcome brain surgery, radiation, all this thing. And you're kind of just saying, I could have given up at any point, but that's not me. Like I'm choosing to forge my own path. If there isn't one, then I'll make my own route. Like I just love, you're just such a badass. You just really are. Like, I think that the motivation that you show and your perseverance are just amazing. And I'm a big fan of yours. I will just have to say that.
Oh, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You don't have to cry. I'm not trying to make you cry. I just think you're
Good tears.
amazing. That's all. Good tears, happy tears.
Yeah, and to tag on to what Denise said, you were so relatable in the book, and the way you wrote it was very real because
Right.
I felt like your emotions were there, your feelings were there, and it wasn't sugar-coated, which was very nice because we didn't have to hear the fluff and the positivity, because you want to be positive, but when you get something like that or you go through, it's very valid that you have those down moments, and then it shows that your journey through it is very motivational, very inspiring for anyone going through anything. I related through so much of what you went through, and some of your things. One of my favorites, and I think about this and it's highlighted, is you said listening was hard. And as soon as I read that, it made so much sense because I got such a great vibe from you of you like to make sure everyone around you is doing well and everyone around you is successful.
To your own demise. Like you want everybody else to be comfortable, and you want like your relationship with your husband, your relationship with your friends. You're willing to make everybody happy at your own expense. And that for me is very relatable too. Like, and not to give too much of the book away, but your journey with your relationship with your husband and things that you wish that you had from him that you felt like you maybe weren't receiving. And you're like, it's okay. Like he's a good guy. At the end of the day, he's an amazing person. So I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. So it was very relatable, and
you were vulnerable,
definitely,
and it kind of made it to where we could be there and be along and root for you. Because sometimes when you're hearing the story, because listening is hard, that really stuck with me. So I felt like you did such an amazing job of connecting with your readers that they could be there and actually go and root for you and also feel for you when you were hitting that part and be like, damn, I've done that. I've been there.
And it
How
was
is
a
she gonna
journey.
handle this?
Yeah. And you took us on the journey with you, and it's very relatable. And at the end, we are all cheering for you. And I
Yes.
think that's what an amazing book can do. It's got a good takeaway, and you're just like, I can't wait to see what else you're gonna do. Like with
Right.
the
So-
hip hop classes and the aerial. And I was like, I want to go hang out with her.
Which I do
We're in
want to ask,
Colorado, right?
have you ever made it back to that stretch of the Pacific Coast Highway?
Not yet.
Okay, you'll definitely have to keep us up to date on where you are when you finally make that. Because I wrote that down. Did she make it back? That was what I wrote in the books. Like, did she
That's
make it? Yeah.
awesome. Oh, I'm gonna make that happen.
I feel like you will.
Absolutely. I know it's not
absolutely.
an if, it's a win for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, thank you for that. So, and thank you so much for all the feedback. I really feel like, I'm walking around with a tumor. What do I have to lose, right? Like,
Yeah.
what else do I have to lose? So, so thank you for all
Well, you
of
make it look good, just so you know.
Right.
We're quite impressed with you and Bubba.
Yes. So where can our readers find you now? We know you just got back, our listeners, sorry, you just got back from Spain. What's your next adventure? And we know you do a lot of advocacy for the rare disease and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce your but so where can our listeners find out what's up with Risa lately?
Yes, well, you can go to my website, risaaugust.com, and my name is spelled with one S, Risa, August, just like the month.com. And all the things are there. My hair sparkles and, all about my book and my coaching and speaking. You can find all of it there. And that was really something I took away from this journey too, is I'm all the things. I'm not just this or that. Like, I encompass so many things, and I want to be expansive and, live that full life. So you can certainly find out about me there.
Your pictures and your tutu are gorgeous on your website.
I know.
Oh,
And
yes,
yeah, absolutely. And we're definitely going to put all your contact information in the podcast notes, so they will have a way to contact you. But I just want to say it's been a pleasure, Risa. We really did enjoy reading the book and and interviewing you today. It's been an amazing journey. I feel like we took a journey with you. We weren't on the bike ride. You did all the hard work. But I feel like you did accomplish taking us on the journey with you. So thank you for that.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. You two are so fun, and I hope you'll invite me on a trip someday.
Oh,
we
absolutely.
Surely will.
We probably won't cycle, but
right. No, yes, promise I don't have to get on a bike because listen,
it's a
Misty
deal.
is a little too bougie. Let's do something more
I
pampered.
will say, Denise and I did talk about we could be in the van, and if you want to know what the van is,
we could be in your
check out
stretcher. We could be in your supply
we
van.
Could totally be the van on your
I
next
could
journey.
totally be your pep talker and coach you on and
Okay. But I'm also traveling more in comfort these days, so I wouldn't be opposed to being in the van too.
Oh,
okay.
Nice.
Well, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, well, maybe we'll have to make a trip out to Colorado. It's on my bucket list. I have not made it out to Colorado yet. So maybe a meetup is in our future.
Fabulous. That would be great.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, guys, Suitcase Divas are out for the day, but definitely check out Risa's book. We'll give you all the information, and we will see you next time. Bye, guys.